Hey everybody, Jason Thibodeau here, JMJ Financial in Huntington Beach. I've got with us today Matt Morrell in our Idaho branch. I've got with us today Stephen Thomas, which most of you, I think, will know who's tuning into this podcast. He's with the Housing Report. Stephen Thomas is somebody who has been the data guy in the local marketplace here in Orange County, and for that matter, most of Southern California for real estate. This goes all the way back to after the financial crisis when I was a young, hungry, very starving loan officer and preparing for real estate sales meetings as a young man in my 20s. And I was always trying to figure out, where do I get the data? Where do I get the information? How do I talk intelligently to all of this? And thank God at that time I had found Stephen Thomas, and I've been following him ever since. So it's been more than a decade, by the way, Stephen. I appreciate you for that. You made me sound smart. And before we dive into the details, I do want to make sure just people know how to get a hold of you. And I'm sure, people know how to go on Instagram and all that, but do you have like a preferred place where people would go to find information for you?
Yeah, it's reportsonhousing.com. That's the name of our company, Reports on Housing.
Cool. Yeah. And
it's our handle. It's our handle as well on Instagram and on Facebook and also on YouTube.
Yeah. And given the current inflationary environment we're hopefully slowly coming out of this year, I always tease Stephen every time I see him and say, you don't charge enough money for your information. All that to say, it's actually really good stuff and surprisingly affordable for real estate professionals and any homeowners who are interested in paying attention to something on and beyond what mainstream media has to say, which we all know is suspect.
Yeah.
Last piece, before we jump into the detail, Matt, I have to say this, buddy. Happy birthday, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Right on. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right. We're heading into 2024. We're already almost past January. You've probably done all your forecasting at this point, Stephen, but, Super Bowl Sunday approaches, and that's kind of like the turning of the corner heading towards spring busy season. I think where I want to kick this off, and obviously I want Matt to chime in where he sees fit too, but, if you were to compare 2023 to how you think 2024 is going to go, with it being an election year and us 1 year further into the inflation fight that the Fed's waging, like, how do you see this going? What's your high level overview right now?
Yeah, so 2023, we definitely established a bottom, especially in pricier markets like where I'm located here in Southern California, as well as the Bay Area along the coast. When you get these high dollar volumes, interest rates, oh man, this is a really sensitive topic. It's sensitive across the United States anyway, but when you get to the high dollars, it really just doesn't make sense after a while, and very few people participate. Few people are participated across the U.S. as well. So in 2023, we actually probably established a bottom for demand. And I look at demand as pending sales activity, which translates to closed sales activity. It's just you need more pending sales activity in order to have units. Even in the lender front, you need more refis, you need more stuff in the pipe. And you're going to get more stuff in the pipe as rates fall from their highs. So last year kind of established that bottom where it's only up from there. And I had this visual of the bottom of a peanut butter jar, and you're scraping the bottom. It's kind of what 2023 was. And it's also in terms of the number of homeowners that refuse to place their homes on the market because they are enjoying these incredibly low mortgage rates. Across the United States, it's 80% of everybody across the U.S. has a mortgage rate at 5% or lower, and there's a lot below 4%, and there's still a strong percentage below 3%. Well, when you look at that, it precludes a lot of people from moving. Some people don't like the term mortgage lockdown. I actually refer to it as just hunkering down. It's like, why move? And we've heard it plenty. Because when you look at the difference between where their underlying mortgage rate is and where mortgage rates have been, it's been such a big gap that, you know what, we'll just put this on the back burner. But I saw an interesting study that was done by Zillow. A lot of people don't like to quote Zillow. They like to just quote the study, but it's 23% of all homeowners want to make a move within the next 3 years, and it's the highest ever. It's called pent-up seller demand. So we've established a bottom in terms of homeowners not placing their homes on the market, and you really can see it across the United States. So what's happened in recent months is we're starting to see an uptick in the number of homeowners coming on the market. Still not where it was prior to COVID or prior to this big jump in mortgage rates. But still, it's more than the prior year, which means when you have more homes coming on the market, you can actually see it in pending sales activity, that we're seeing an increase in pending sales activity.
Yeah.
So what that means, we established a bottom as far as pending sales activity is concerned. We've established a bottom in terms of number of homes coming on the market, which means more pending sales, more closed units. And you're wondering, where are we going to get those extra units from? It's more homes coming on the market. And I have a firm belief that we thought it was going to happen last year, but the consumer is running out of funds. But we definitely are going to see some sort of slowdown in 2024 compared to 2023 in terms of the economy. And we're not thinking recession, but a slowdown nonetheless, where that will bring interest rates down to a lower level, which will invite more demand as well as more homes coming on the market.
Yeah. Thank you for laying that out. The one thing to interject on that is, I think our industry is kind of misunderstood right now, because everybody's feeling like, oh, prices haven't really come down, so your industry is doing great. And just like you alluded to, like, it's an issue of velocity of transactions. In other words, there's not a lot of turnover in properties happening right now. So yes, because of, what you called, what some people, I guess I should say, call the mortgage rate lockdown, keeping people in their homes. What people don't understand is, in our industry, we're in a recession in our industry because there's just a lack of transactions happening right now. Yes, property values are high, but that doesn't necessarily mean a sign of health for our industry. I don't know what your feedback on that would be.
Yeah, it's the people are wondering, when is this recession going to hit? And the recession hit housing.
We've been in it.
And yeah, it's not a recession in terms of values, like the Gen Z and millennials, more than 50% were hoping for. Instead, it's this recession in terms of units. So now there are fewer participants. We already said fewer sellers, so it's just fewer units. Anybody tied to real estate, and there's a lot tied. Think about the trickle-down effect. You sell one piece of property, those people go to Home Depot, they get different trades, they get a washer and dryer. There's this, that in turn creates more revenue out there, and that too, that people get commissions off of that, and it just keeps on going down the road. But when you pull out all of these units, it definitely has an impact on the overall economy. So it's definitely going to be a negative drag on GDP, especially going forward. However, like I said, we're going to start to see more units, which would be something that would counteract the slowdown in the economy that's most likely coming.
Yeah. And you're saying we're already seeing that a little bit, Stephen, because obviously, in October, interest rates peaked at 8%, 10-year Treasury over 5%. My partner Matt here and I were semi-panicking, because I was like, oh my gosh, not only is it the seasonally slow period, but now we have the crazy spike in rates that took place on and beyond what we were already dealing with. And then all of a sudden, right, what a difference 4 or 5 weeks makes. We saw the largest drop in the 10-year Treasury in that period of time in a very long time. Correct me if I'm wrong. We went all the way down to 3.8 roughly, but of course it's creeping back up a little bit. But still, we're way better off than we were in October, and that's helping, I assume.
And a lot of it has to do just with the language of the Fed changing from their hawkish stance, which they really started adopting it in August of 2022 when they came out of an economic symposium that they do on an annual basis. Before that, they were playing around with rates. No one knew if they're going to be doing this for how long. But come August, they put their foot down and said it's going to be like this for a while. And then interest rates made their way up towards 7.37% in October of last year, or 2 years ago. And so they've kept that going, and they keep on talking that all this that they're going to do, it's going to be higher for longer, is what Wall Street adopted. And it felt like that's where they were going to go in September when they released their dots, and they said, yeah, you know what, we're going to keep we're only going to do one rate cut in all of 2024. All of a sudden, we saw the 10-year Treasury and rates climb, surpassing 8%, and then an 8 handle on it. People were just screaming, but then when they got to 8%, you could see the Fed didn't like how overly restrictive they were, because you could see inflation's coming down nicely, and yet the interest rates were going the wrong direction, way higher than what they thought, and including the 10-year and everything else. And so now they're too restrictive. So they changed their language. But now they're kind of like, and then they became dovish in December, and then they said 3 rate cuts for 2024. And then they changed their language too. But since then, we've had some hotter reports for December that have been reported in January. And I hate how everybody is so data dependent. Inflation's going to make its way down, and I actually think the Fed should come down anyways this year. But they keep on. If there's something that's too positive, now they're starting to speak a little more hawkish. So they're like hawkish, dovish. You can't quite understand.
Yeah, some mixed messages basically.
Yeah, so you're wondering where it's ultimately going to go from here. But what I'm most concerned about is actually the consumer, and they're the biggest piece of GDP. Like 70% of GDP is consumption. Well, hey, you know what? There's a big giant headwind, and that headwind is they're saving. Consumers are saving at the rate of that they last saved in 2009. It's it's 40% lower than where it was prior to COVID. And so that's one flag that's out there. Also, they've had excess savings from stimulus. They're running out of that. That should run out first quarter or sometime into the second quarter, like April, May type of thing. And credit card debt has been spiking. So you can only put so much on plastic, and these rates that are higher create a much higher rate than where they were prior to this run up in interest rates. So the consumers going to hit this crunch eventually. And that's where we're going to see this eventual slowdown.
Hey, Stephen, what do you think the risk is? You know, we've got a PCE report due out this Friday. What's the risk that we see a slowdown in the economy? Maybe we see a mild recession. The Fed cuts rates as they're, alluding to, and the market's anticipating. And all of a sudden, we're running massive budget deficits. The Fed is doing QE again. What's the risk, if any, of inflation taking off again? Is that a risk that we need to be mindful of?
Well, the whole run up in inflation it all stems from COVID reactions around the world, and then you throw in this problem in Ukraine and other international turmoil, and that just was further disruption. So we have all these disruptions in supply. That was biggest portion of it, as well as the consumer had way too much money in their pockets, so they were adding to supply, and yet the supply chains were kind of a little bit broken there. So, and they still have this excess savings that they've been depleting. So once the excess savings go away, this thing is going to make its way down. The issue is they want to see that inflation stays at 2%, but there's so much international turmoil, and we're changing the way that we're doing business, where it was much more international trade, and we're backing off a little bit from that we're going to have a harder time maintaining a 2%. So you can definitely see a case for like 2.5% or 2.75%, but you know what? That's much better than 9% inflation that we were dealing with.
What would that mean for rates? Where do you think rates settle in, maybe the end of this year? And what's your forecast for the rest of 2024?
Yeah, so if you're talking where the rate should be long term, I've heard people talk all over the place. There are so many differing opinions as to where it should be. I really think that they're about 2 points too high, so it should be probably right around 3.5. They need to leave themselves some room in case we do go into a real slowdown, where they really need to fight it with not just quantitative easing, but with bringing rates down. That's really the biggest lever that they would like to employ. So, but where we see rates falling to, you already saw this big giant jump because there's a lot of cash on the sidelines, and we saw that in December, where they were waiting. Every time that the 10-year Treasury blew above 5%. There was a bunch of buyers, because that was the threshold where people were going, that's ridiculous. That's
it takes
way
money
too
out of
overly
stocks.
restrictive. And a lot of people got into it. So that's why 8% was kind of that threshold where it was having a hard time getting above 8% and staying there. And Fed didn't like it there anyways. Everybody intuitively knew that. And then there's some people saying you could go to 9 or 10%. I remember we had a 10% rate. It's just, it can't happen. Talking that
it would destroy our economy, and the debt load that we have right now that would not be sustainable Nobody wants that, and that just points to there's a lot of doom and gloom out there for sure. Let's see here.
The debt. Let me get back to interest rates, and I'll talk about the
Go
debt.
ahead.
The interest rates. So where I think things are going to go is we're going to slow down. You already saw this big dip that started in October when just the Fed started pivoting in language, and some of the data came out more favorable, and we saw it drift down. And then we saw this big drop when the Fed spoke in December, and it made its way down. And now we have interest rates in the sixes. Man, everybody was like cheering in the streets, the sixes. But at the beginning of 2023, nobody would have been cheering for interest rates in the sixes. That's what the great gift of having 8%, because it's made everybody realize that, wow, this is a lot better than it was. So that will, and also even homeowners sitting on the sideline. I used to say 5.5 handles where you need to be for people to get a lot more people place their homes on the market. Now I just think it needs to be a 5 handle, period. 5.99 is going to be psychological barrier for a lot of people, where people go, hey, got to go now. Right. I got to go, honey. We got to definitely participate. So I see interest rates going to, as soon as we see the economy slow, moving down to that next level between 6 and 6.5. Right now we're playing between 6.5 and really 7, but we can get enough hot things where we've seen it float up higher the longer it takes for us to get something negative. But this is going to be a year where I think we're going to see more negative stuff. So you get from 6 to 6.5. And then at the economy, we believe that it'll slow down enough where then we can get drift down below 6. And as we get more into some where things feel like that they're at least settling, you're going to see this shrinking of the 10-year treasury and the spread of the 30-year mortgage rate. Right now it's so big, but it's been narrowing. It will narrow even further. It should only be 1.7 above where the 10-year treasury is. That's what rate should be. So we could be like a full point less.
Can you explain in layman's terms why that spread is so large right now?
In
other words, the spread between the 30-year fix and the 10-year treasury, like you alluded to, it's normally 1.7% on average. Right now it was over 300 basis points. It's trickling down to 275. But, technically speaking, if we were following tradition, historically, we should be at least 1% lower right now than we are. Right. I think I know the answer to that, but just for the audience, what is your take on that?
Yeah, part of it is we're in uncharted waters, and when you're in uncharted waters, you want to protect you want to protect yourself, especially if you're tied to lending and you're going to be purchasing loans and you're going to be processing them and doing all the work, collecting all the payments. You're definitely going to want to make a profit, but the risk is once rates do come down, that all of a sudden everybody refinances. There was already a big problem when we went from 8% to below 7%. I talked to some lenders that had pipes that were going, oh, we're in trouble. We're going to have to work with them and see if we can pay them off to wait on refinancing, because they can almost refinance immediately after closing. So they're create some issues along that, and that's what they want to do is they want to make extra money, and the only way to do that is by charging extra. So that's the risk. And when
does that risk go away, though? Like, what has to happen for that risk premium to go away in the minds of these investors and lenders? Like, when are they it's all clear, rates are going down?
Yeah, it's got to be more along the lines of we actually see inflation continues to make its way down, that the Fed is definitely done. They're stopped talking like they're hawkish, dovish, that they're just dovish, and they're saying we're staying pat. It's those kind of factors. We see the jobs. They're really focused on jobs. I'm not that inflation's coming down fine, and yet the job market's still really resilient, really strong. Wages aren't out of control. I'm not really that concerned as much as they are. I'm concerned starting in 2030 on because of aging out of baby boomers and things like that.
Demographics.
So those are more. I have those kind of economic concerns down the road, but we've got to see that things move more towards a normal atmosphere. And when people are still talking about hard landings, soft landings, and that type of stuff, we got to wait for the landing to occur or have already occurred before people go, all right, we're there. We're not there.
We need clarity, and we just don't have it yet. Yeah, it was a little frustrating after the Fed finally pivoted, so to speak, or at least we thought he did in December. And all the Fed members on CNBC and wherever they were speaking kind of backtracked on all that afterwards. So the mixed messaging is a little bit frustrating. There's no doubt about it. And I've heard anything from the Fed's not hiking or cutting this year to the Fed's cutting in March, right? And inflation's no longer an issue. And like, do you know, and do you not know, but do you have an opinion on when Fed's actually going to start cutting?
Right now it's just pushing it further and further along. I think by the time we get to June, that's where the goalpost kind of like, that's where they're aligning. It's like it's not the first time they meet in March, or the next time they meet in March. It's definitely not the one that they're about to meet, but not in March either. And that's when the dots come out again. So we'll have to see what happens when they release these dots every quarter. Let me tell you, I've actually painted where these dots have gone. And they were constantly churning them up higher and higher and higher ever since December of 2021. So they started every single time their dots got higher and higher. This is the first time their dots actually went the other direction, and that was December. So that was telling. But you hear them say the different things. Well, then why in the world did you put your dots where you put your dots, for Pete's sake? I know that people that are whose dots are whose. You have a pretty good idea after listening to these different Fed presidents. And then when they talk out of both sides of their mouth, it's just they got to get off of their little pedestals and stop talking, for Pete's sake. They pretty much have executed excellently what they need to do with inflation, and it's going to come down. They're actually over restrictive right now, and the longer they wait, the more damage that they create for the economy, and it will not be that soft landing that everybody is talking about on Wall Street.
Before I jump in, Matt, feel free.
No, that's all great. I appreciate the thoughts on rates. That's obviously the biggest topic on most people's minds, and plays such a big factor in, as you alluded to, future inventory and turnover and transactions for our industry. So, we're so dependent on where those rates end up. It's important. So thank you.
Yeah. And the good news is already we're starting to see, we only have like a teeny little piece of 2024, a sliver to look at. But the sliver we're looking at right now is more homes are coming on the market than the prior year. It's still less than where we were prior to COVID, but it's more than last year. That's that bottom I was talking about. And we're seeing more pending sales. That's also better. And there are markets that have, across the United States, collectively as a whole, there are more homes on the market than last year at this time. But not all markets are like that. So you need to know what's going on in your local market, looking at year-over-year data to find out where your inventory is really at. And even comparing it to last year, the last couple of years, we've been really low as far as inventory is concerned anyways.
It's a great takeaway. I think that's an important milestone for people to walk away with from this conversation with, is we have hit a bottom, right? And that was last year. And that's exciting because that's kind of like a psychological turning of the corner. And it's just good for the health of our industry, right? The anemic inventory and the challenge that buyers face trying to get an offer accepted right now. It's unbelievably difficult, and I feel really terribly for first-time buyers, right? Because I see the struggle, and these are well-qualified, dual incomes, great credit, good down payment, family support, gift money, non-contingent, you name it. They're well-equipped, and they're also aggressive in their offers. And there's a lot of swinging and missing going on, and no fault of their own. And I'd like for this just for the relief of suffering for some of these first-time buyers, it'd be nice to see some normalcy return. Selfishly speaking, for me and my P&L, I'd like to see it get better. But honestly, just for the human aspect of this, and then, a totally different topic, which we won't talk about today, but I'd like to see some sort of restrictions on institutional investors and cash buyers coming and sweeping up all these properties out from under families trying to buy their home. You know what I mean? That's the other piece that frustrates me. So put your dad hat on, right? Because I know you happen to be a father of quite a few kids. What's your advice for a first-time home buyer today? Is in my opinion, just buy a home, right? Assuming you can afford it. Don't set yourself up for financial failure. Don't stretch yourself too far. Matt and I take pride in being an advisor at the end of the day and not being a high-pressure salesperson. On the other hand, if you can swing it and you have the right support system with family, or you can do it on your own, I think the right move is to buy a home today for a bunch of different reasons. But putting your dad hat on, what would your advice be to one of your kids? Should you buy a home this year or not?
Yeah, the number one reason that people need to buy a home is just for sheer homeowners have more more investments, and as far as their total dollar investments, including savings and 401ks, as well as their equity in their home, the homeowners have it's far outpaces renters. Renters is like this little flat kind of going up curve, and you can
Hard
see
to
what
build
happens
wealth.
with
Yeah.
homeowners. It's homeownership is huge. It does not mean that you have to live in your home. You got to think outside. You got to figure out a way of getting into a home. Here in California, things can get really expensive. So if you can't get in, at least get something. Get a studio, or get an investment property someplace else that's within a sphere that you can still drive to. That's my own take. But
Such a good point, by the way.
What's that?
That's a really good point. Yeah, because I think a lot of people pigeonhole themselves into, you grew up in Orange County. I've dealt with, buyers who get stuck in that mentality of, oh, well, I need to buy in bougie areas of Costa Mesa as my first home, right? And it's like, maybe you don't.
Yeah, it's to me, it's get into the real estate. I have 9 kids, so they span from age from 27 down to 6. So I'm worried about a lot of them and what they say. The average, the median price first-time home buyer is 32 years old. So that says a lot. My 22-year-old was scratching his head, and he works with us, and he's going, man, am I ever going to be able to purchase? I told him that, and he goes, wow, I still have 10 more years, but we're going to get him into someplace down the road. But here, the other thing is you can actually purchase something, rent out a room to someone you love or somebody you know. There's different ways to offset that. Buying a 2-unit, a duplex, is not double the price. It's like 1.6. So you get somebody to rent out the other unit, and that's another way to get in. So you got to think outside the box, but get into it is pretty much what I have been telling my kids, and getting into it now. The longer you wait, I don't see a way out of this inventory crunch crisis. Right. It's very chronic. I don't see it going away. There's baby boomers are aging in place, so that they'll start to sell their homes, but it won't be at a clip that we would like for it to be. It's not going to be a silver tsunami. You know what? There's just all these people that are locked in great fixed low mortgage rates. They're not going to move anytime soon. I mean, some will, but it's not going to be like as many as before. So we're just going to be dealing with fewer homes. So what that means is, when interest rates finally do fall, we're going to get more demand because more people will be able to afford a home. When it went from 7% to 8%, all of a sudden 5 million households across the United States could no longer afford a home. Well, when it went from 8 to 7, now 5 million could. And then when it goes from 7 to 6, more people can. So we're actually going to get this big spike in the number of home people that are in the market and that want to purchase. We will get more homes that come on the market. It's just that the number of buyers coming in will outpace the number of sellers. And we already have a problem in the entry level. You can think about it. Entry level, like even like condos and townhomes, but how about detached houses, entry level, and you know what those price ranges are for whatever part of the country. And those are already nuts. They're going to travel towards insane levels where it's multiple offers, they get outbid, and you get these prices above the asking price. That's the direction we're going to go again in 2024. I just don't see this going away as interest rates fall more.
Yeah. Yeah. And a reminder that a lot of first-time buyers, it's totally typical when I'm chatting with a first-time buyer that they do have family support, right? Somebody is moving in to rent out a room, right? They're getting a co-signer in the form of mom or dad and or a gift, or they're buying with a sibling, right? You got to think creatively. The other thing you mentioned about multifamily, just making sure people know, right, is Fannie Mae just came out with the allowance for somebody to buy a multifamily 2, 3, or 4 units as their primary residence with as little as 5% down, right? That used to not be a thing. FHA did offer it with a lot of restrictions that made it hard to actually translate into the real world. So it can be done. It really can be done. And I like what you're saying, because I think that a lot of first-time home buyers just look at all this. All they see is go on Zillow and see the starter home for $1 million. And it's like, how am I ever going to do this? You have to change your perspective a little bit, get creative. It's guys like Matt and I who can help with that, obviously. But Steven's offering up his sage wisdom and dad advice, being a dad of 9 kids, which is awesome, by the way. I have 2, so I don't know how you do that.
My hair's white.
Yeah. It explains it. Okay.
I think it's important to mention too, Jay, you kind of touched on it, but as a first-time homebuyer, there's just got to be a willingness to step into something that might be a little smaller, not in the perfect area. My wife and I started with a 900 square foot condo for our first home, right?
Yeah.
But it got us in the game, as Steven was alluding to. And once you're in the game, things happen much more quickly than you can imagine most of the time. And it's the first step to getting you into the dream home someday. But it's not realistic to think you can go straight to that $1 million home for most people in Costa Mesa. There's got to be some stepping stones and you work your way up. So if you've got that willingness to not be in the perfect area, not be in the 3,000 square foot home and start small, I think it's realistic that you can get into something in the Orange County, LA marketplace. So,
yeah. Michael Jordan didn't start out as Michael Jordan, right? We have to take certain steps to get where we want to be in the long run. So there is no need to buy the massive, fancy, bougie house on your very first home purchase. Anyway, Steven, I totally appreciate you being here with us today. Just a reminder to everybody to look Steven up. And if you thought there was value in what you heard today, we sure would appreciate you subscribing and liking our podcast as we look to grow this channel. And I think we're in wrap-up mode because we hit our 30-minute mark. Matt, we're getting good at that, so nice work.
Nice work.
Any parting words?
Final thoughts?
Steven, any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's just know that last year was a bottom. It's only going to go up as far as terms of units are concerned. That's for everybody out there that's tied to the real estate business. And then no foreclosures. There's no foreclosure wave. There will be foreclosures, but no foreclosure wave, no crash. Yeah. You need lots of homes. The problem is we have chronic low inventory. So can't listen to that stuff. Listen to real good advisors that know what they're doing. Lean into people like you, real professionals. Lean into people like what we do, and we're housing analysts. I'm not going to tell you what stocks to purchase or how the stock market's going. I will tell you how the housing market's going because that's my lane. So lean into the professionals that are out there. Don't resort to listening to YouTube hacks and perma bears and that type of thing for all of your information.
Yeah, well said, Steven.
Thank you, Steven.
Thank you so much. Okay, see you guys next time.
Bye.